Remembered as a late-lamented victim of the beaching axe, the Somerset and Dorset Joint Railway ran across the heart of Western England between Bath in Somerset and Bournemouth in Dorset, and provided a long-standing collaborative route between the LMS in the north and the Southern Railway in the south, though in the end, the changing policies of British Railways and its perceived loss of role meant this once vital route was highlighted for closure by the middle of the 1960s. The Somerset and Dorset Railway had been preceded by a vast array of canal networks that stretched across Western England between the Bristol Channel in the north and the English Channel in the south, including a navigable waterway that had opened in 1833 between Highbridge, a mile inland from the North Somerset coast, to Glastonbury on the Somerset levels. This canal was subsequently replaced by the first mainline railway between Bristol and Exeter during 1854, while the section between Glastonbury and Highbridge was superseded by the Somerset Central Railway, the expansion of this business seeing the line extended from Highbridge to Burnham-on-Sea, and the following year from Glastonbury to the city of Wells. More important to railway magnates, as they expanded the influence of their systems across Western England, was the provision of a direct north-south railway connecting the Bristol and English channels, removing what was then an extremely unreliable sailing route via Land's End that was both time-consuming and prone to dangerous weather. Thus the Somerset Central Railway was extended southeastwards from Glastonbury to Cole near Bruton in 1862. In 1860, the Dorset Central Railway Company, which shared essentially the same management team as the Somerset Central, opened a line between Blandford and Wimborne, where it connected with the Southampton to Dorchester line, followed by another route between Templecombe and Cole in 1862. With the two companies essentially sharing the same management, and with little physically separating their networks, the Dorset Central and Somerset Central Railways subsequently merged in 1862 to form the Somerset and Dorset Railway, opening the missing link between their two systems between Templecombe and Blandford during 1863, resulting in a coast-to-coast route between Burnham and Hamworthy in Poole Harbour. In 1872, the line was extended from Broadstone to Poole and then to a dedicated terminus at Bournemouth West Station in 1874, allowing the route access to the highly profitable holiday traffic for this budding resort town. However, the relative lack of business over this rural route resulted in the need for further expansion to achieve financial security, and it was decided that the line would need to be extended from a junction near the village of Evercreech to Bath, where it would link up with existing railways to Bristol, the Midlands and the north. Meanwhile, at Templecombe, the line would connect with the southwestern mainline route from London Waterloo to Devon and Cornwall, thus providing a convenient north-south connection not only between the Bristol and English channels, but also between the various individual main lines linking London to the southwest. The extension over the Mendip Hills was opened in 1874, but came at an exceptionally steep construction cost due to the need to build over the tough gradients of this winding route, while in numerous cases, tunnels and viaducts had to be built when the gradient became too unmanageable for contemporary steam locomotives. The extension to Bath, together with the sudden volume of traffic that swamped the available rolling stock and track capacity, led eventually to the Somerset and Dorset Railway being rendered bankrupt in 1875, thus leading to its former assets being leased and split between the two prominent railway firms at the northern and southern end of the route. In the north, the Mendip extension to Bath Green Park Station connected with the Midland Railway's main line towards Bristol in the Midlands, while the southern end of the route at Bournemouth provided access onto the London and South Westerns line between Southampton and Weymouth. Therefore, the Somerset and Dorset would be operated under the joint ownership of these two firms, creating the Somerset and Dorset Joint Railway. However, the heavily outstripped Somerset and Dorset Railway desperately needed investment, as demonstrated on August 7, 1876, when two loaded passenger trains collided head-on near Radstock, leading to the deaths of 15 people. The Radstock crash was the result of various factors regarding a lack of training, management and infrastructure necessary to operate the service, compounded further by the increased traffic upon the route due to it being a bank holiday, with contributing factors including the allowance of passengers to travel aboard what was booked as an empty coaching stock movement, a lack of adequate safeguards for single-track sections, and the fact that none of the signalmen or telegraph clerks involved were more than 18 years old. In the wake of the Radstock incident, The joint Midland LSWR operation invested heavily in staff training, improved track and signalling, and provided adequate rolling stock and locomotives, while 1885 saw a new line opened between Corfe-Mullen and Broadstone, which avoided having to reverse trains at Wimborne. More significant was the doubling of the line between Midford, just south of Bath, and Templecombe between 1892 and 1905, alongside the line between Blandford and Corfe-Mullen, while a branch line was opened between Eddington Junction and Bridgewater in 1890, thus providing an additional westbound connection to the Bristol to Exeter main line. The main employ of the Somerset and Dorset Joint Railway was the conveyance of freight from the north at Bath to Templecombe for onward destinations, with 203,571 wagons being transferred via the route during 1910. The Somerset and Dorset system also generating its own bespoke traffic in the form of coal from the North Somerset coalfields around Radstock and Midsummer Norton, stone from the Mendip quarries, peat from the Somerset levels, and farm produce and milk from country stations bound for London. Inbound traffic included general provisions, products, and coal for local domestic and industrial use, while parcels and mail were also carried, though this golden commercial era, that had commenced in around 1890, came to an abrupt end with the start of World War I, with the years following the end of the conflict seeing surplus military lorries employed by private haulage companies to challenge the rail freight business. At the same time, advanced bus design started to rob the passenger market from the railways, especially in rural areas, where often the local train station was situated miles from the nearest town, costs beginning to rise substantially, but opportunities to expand the business not being readily available. Thus, contraction of the industry was the only way forward, starting with the closure of the line between Corfe-Mullen and Wimborne to passengers in 1920, while in a bid to reduce costs, the workshops at Highbridge, where the line's rolling stock had been built and locomotives maintained, was closed in 1930. Essentially, from the closure of the Highbridge workshops, the Somerset and Dorset ceased to operate as a separate entity, now being managed directly by the London Midland and Scottish Railway and the Southern Railway, the successors of the Midland and London South Western Railways respectively, taking with it the distinctive blue livery of the engines and coaches, replaced instead by a mixture of Midland red and Southern green. Passenger traffic on the Somerset and Dorset had always been the weakest aspect of the railway, largely comprising of children travelling to and from school, a small amount of commuter demand to work, particularly into Bath and Bournemouth, housewives travelling to the shops, and social trips to the larger towns and the seaside. In terms of through express trains, from 1910, a daily service was introduced between Manchester and Bournemouth, which travelled over the Somerset and Dorset, this being subsequently named in 1927 to the Pines Express, and would become the flagship operation of the route, while the 1920s and 30s saw additional long-distance trains begin operation during the summer months. Bank holidays and the summer season was the peak for passenger traffic, with the late 1950s seeing trains for Bournemouth running on summer Saturdays from places such as Manchester, Liverpool, Bradford, Leeds, Nottingham, Derby and Birmingham, though intermediate stops, even at the height of the season, continued to struggle with consistent numbers. In 1948, Britain's railways were nationalised, and the Somerset and Dorset network was divided between the western and southern regions of British Railways, though by this point, a post-war emergence of car travel saw passenger numbers for the entire British railway system plummet, while the meteoric rise of private lorry haulage firms, in combination with unfavourable policies against the railways, meant the precious freight traffic was also robbed on a vast scale. With the financial position of the Somerset and Dorset in severe doubt, a policy of managed decline was introduced to try and salvage the core section between Bath and Bournemouth, with the line between Highbridge and Burnham and the Glastonbury to Wells line being closed in 1951, while the Bridgewater branch was closed in the following year. In 1963, the Beeching Report recommended the closure of Britain's loss-making lines, and into this category fell the remainder of the Somerset and Dorset Joint Railway, the system, by this point, already having been written off by the management, with steam haulage persevering on this mainline route, while other core lines saw diesel traction introduced in large numbers. Long-distance freight traffic was gradually routed away from the line, primarily onto routes east via Westbury and Basingstoke, while the last of the prestigious Pines Express services to run over the route took place on September 8, 1962, with BR Standard 9F, 92220 Evening Star, hauling the train, this service being diverted via Oxford, Reading, Basingstoke and Southampton. By the end of the 1962 summer season, all long-distance Saturday holiday trains had either been rerouted or withdrawn completely, leaving only a motley selection of stopping passenger trains and some through expresses to form a basic service, freight continuing to be the domain of the route right up until its dying days. Despite a strong opposition from locals as to the closure of the route, the decision to axe the Somerset and Dorset was finalised on September 6, 1965, with closure scheduled for January 3rd of the following year, though this was deferred when one of the road operators withdrew their application for a licence to provide some of the alternative road services, and an emergency service was introduced on that date instead. This reduced the number of trains departing Bath to 4 a day, scheduled at 06:45 a.m., 8:15 a.m., 16:25 p.m. and 18:10 p.m., together with 2 trains per day to Highbridge, one at 6:55 a.m. and the other at 1600, the only through train on the route between Bath Green Park and Bournemouth Central being the 1846 on Saturdays, with other journeys being broken at Templecombe and no suitable connections provided. Finally, on March 7, 1966, the Somerset and Dorset Joint Railway, including both the main line from Bath to Bournemouth and the Evercreech Junction to Highbridge line, were closed and dismantled, leaving only a small selection of isolated assets remaining in operation beyond the full closure of the wider network. Blandford Station remained open for freight only and was accessed by a branch from Broadstone until 1969, while a section from the Great Western Main Line at Highbridge to Bassenbridge remained open to allow milk trains to access the United Dairies Creamery, this route also being used to remove fly ash associated with the construction of the M5 motorway, the opening of which finally closed this spur in October 1972 as the milk traffic was transferred to tanker trucks. The final operational section of the former Somerset and Dorset was a short connection west of Radstock North between the Great Western Main Line and Lower Ridlington Colliery, Braesdown Colliery and Ridlington Colliery, the products of which were used to fuel the Portishead coal-fired power station, though once all coal had been extracted from the Somerset coal field, the Ridlington Colliery, as the last of these facilities, was closed on September 28, 1973, and with it this final lingering spur. Today, little remains of the Somerset and Dorset, apart from a few remnants and some sections of the former trackbed out in the Somerset countryside, its most prominent reminders being the fully refreshed though trackless Bath Green Park station, and a series of preserved Somerset and Dorset rolling stock, including 2 steam locomotives and a selection of coaches and wagons. Years after its end, though, the Somerset and Dorset still holds a place in the heart of rail enthusiasts due to its perceived sense of individuality and identity that, even to its end in 1966, made it stand out against both the Big Four and the subsequent nationalised operator British Railways. While the line knew very little in the way of sustained profits, especially once lorry and bus traffic had arrived on the scene to rob it of its vital workloads, this route, which travelled through some of the most beautiful countryside in England, remains an icon of Britain's railway heritage, and is lovingly remembered for its unique joint operation, the famous Pines Express, and its winding course through the magnificent Mendip Hills.